Thank you. On behalf of the 38 members of the committee, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight as we kick off the 2024 election season with this Congressional Candidate Forum. We're very fortunate tonight to be joined by, and I actually have not seen her, but I thought she was coming, Town Supervisor Kathy Burke-Gonzalez. Not sure, maybe hasn't arrived yet, apologies there. Suffolk County Legislator Ann Welker, I do see you. And I had someone signed up. Craig Herskowitz was signed up. I don't believe I see him, but Craig Herskowitz is running for New York State's 2nd Senate District, and he's wonderful. The chair of the Southold Democrats, Sandy Benedetto, is joining us tonight. The chair of the Southampton Democratic Committee, Gordon Hare, is here. Gordon. And the vice chair of the Shelter Island Dems, Kat Brigham, is here. Let's see. Jay Schneiderman, who needs no introduction, is here this evening. And East Hampton Town Board member Ian Calder-Piedmont is here. Hey, Ian. And 1,000 apologies if I've missed anyone. I was running around a little bit beforehand. But thank you, everyone, so much for being here. Okay, now it's time for some tough love. We should all be prepared for a rough road ahead. 2024 is going to be a close race. We don't need to ride the daily roller coaster to know that the presidential will be decided by just 6 swing states. And closer to home, Democrats have not won the congressional seat in this district since 2012. So even though East Hampton remains most definitely and defiantly blue, we can't take anything for granted. The red waves that washed over Long Island in 2022 and 23 have not receded. The 24 elections won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is. So let's make sure that we celebrate the wins when they happen, like Tom Suozzi's victory in the special election to replace George Santos in the 3rd Congressional District. But let's also go into the challenge ahead with open eyes and firm convictions that what we believe in is worth fighting for. Those of us in attendance tonight are engaged in the political process, but so many other folks are not. That's why events like this are so important. So when you leave tonight, please be sure to share what you've learned with your networks. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Spread the word to your families, friends, neighbors, and colleagues about the importance of voting in the primary on June 25th and the general election on November 5th. As President Biden likes to say, there is nothing we can't do if we do it together. It's going to take each and every one of us working together to get our excellent Democratic candidates elected at all levels of government. With that in mind, I'd like to bring out 2 outstanding public servants who are running to represent us in the State Assembly and State Senate, Sarah Anker and Tommy John Schiavoni. I'm going to give Sarah and Tommy John, a chance to introduce themselves. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah first.
Okay. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I'm Sarah Anker. I've been a Suffolk County Legislator for 13 years, 7 campaigns. It's been a long haul. And what's fascinating is that I am in a Republican district, and I still won, even if it was just by 1 vote on election night. I still won the campaigns. I'm a mother of 3. I live in Mount Sinai, and I truly believe in grassroots advocacy. I created a not-for-profit about 20 years ago advocating that we find out why there's so many women coming down with breast cancer. And I truly believe it's environmentally related, many of the cases. I worked with the Civic Association, creating beautiful parks, quality of life projects. I just finished up as a legislator, which, by the way, was my last term limited day was December 31st of last year. But the North Shore Rail Trail is a beautiful trail, 10-mile trail, federally funded, that I was able to work on. And a lot of folks said, there's no way you're going to get it done. But I did it. And I feel that there's so much more to do on the state level. You know, we have so many issues with affordability. You know, where are our kids going to live? Right now, they're in our basement, or they're moving away to another state. We need to do more with that, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I've worked with a lot of affordability housing developments and looking to not only help our young adults, but our senior citizens. I chaired the senior committee for many years, and I was just out at Leisure Village the other day, and I'm going to go into, this is a really important topic while you're here, fundraising. I know it's not glamorous, and it's something I know I don't like doing a lot. I'd rather get into the issues, but we have to do it. And Tommy John and I have this amazing ability to get matching funds 10 times by the state. So your contribution of $100 is really going to be worth $1,050. Your contribution, let's see, was it $10, is like $160. It's given me the ability to have a truly viable race. My opponent is an incumbent. He's a Republican. He's been endorsed by not only unions, but law enforcement. I had those endorsements as a legislator, and I'm going to take them away from him. So hopefully, hopefully I can. Hopefully I can. My dad was IBEW. I'm from a union family. My 3 kids, my son is getting his master's degree at University of Pennsylvania. He's in Philly, and he says, Mom, I think I want to be mayor of Philly. And I'm like, okay, Josh, you give it a shot, but I'd rather you come home. How about the city or a closer place? My daughter, actually, my younger daughter, she is getting her master's degree at Boston University for education. So she's going to be a school teacher, as my sister is a school teacher. And what's interesting is they both have their graduations on the same weekend. So I'll be flying from Boston to Philly within the day. But again, I truly believe that there's so many more important issues that we need to address. I'm very based with family values, and that's something we need to get across to everyone. You know, we're being steamrolled by the Republican Party, and we need to show them that we are the real deal. We are the people here within Suffolk County that can make their lives better. So thank you so much. Go to sarahanker.com, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. And I want to give a special thanks to the East Hampton Town Democrats and Anna Scranta and all of the volunteers for getting this night together. Thank you so much. We're here in East Hampton, and I want you to know I have deep roots in East Hampton. My mother came from East Hampton. In fact, she was raised on the west banks of Georgia Pond right over here. In a small cottage. We would call that workforce housing today. Her mother came from Ireland at 14 years old by herself and was on the docks of New York with nothing but her brains and a bag of clothes. Now, she found work, and one of the jobs that she found, which was kind of the job of her life, was to work for a family, and that's how my family came out here to East Hampton. She worked for one of the wealthy families on the ocean, the Wainwrights. Now, she loved the job. She was loyal to them. They were loyal to her. And she worked hard. And one of those children ended up becoming our congressman. He was a 12-year congressman, Stuyvesant Wainwright, and my grandmother was always proud that she helped raise that young man and who became a congressman. She had this zeal for public service, for love of the United States, for a profound desire to defend the United States. She came from another country. She knows the opportunities that she had here. And she instilled that to her family and to us. And that's one of the reasons why I went into public service. I am a 32-year teacher in the Santa Maria School District. I've held multiple positions in government in a variety of levels over the past 2 decades. And I know that everyone here, if you're here, you understand the issues that we are facing. Water quality, incredibly important. Surface water and groundwater. We have no viable alternative for drinking water on Long Island. In addition to that, preserving farmland and wooded areas, sustainability, coastal resilience. We're seeing that all over Long Island, and we are going to need a real partner a continued partner in the state to address coastal resilience. In addition to that, education on Long Island, incredibly important, and housing. I mentioned workforce housing. We can do this here on the east end of Long Island, and we can do it in a way that maintains the character of our communities, and we have to do it. In addition to that, some of the social health issues that are facing us. I don't think there's a person in this room that has not been affected by the opioid addiction crisis that is facing the country right now. Also, the mental health crisis. Very often, it's our schools that's the point of contact for treatment for mental health issues in our community. When I go to Albany, I will continue the work of our esteemed Assemblyman Fred Thiel on your behalf on all of those issues and more. So I want to tell you folks, with your help, with the grace of God, the grandson of Margaret Catherine Daly, that young girl who was on the docks in New York City, will be the Assemblyman for the East End of Long Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and Tommy John. You have our support. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you. And Tommy John just mentioned his esteemed colleague, Fred Thiel, and Fred's not with us tonight, but I just want to... Okay, let's get to the main event. Please join me now in welcoming our moderator, Perry Gershon, who came within 4 points of Lee Zeldin when he ran for Congress in 2018, ran a phenomenal campaign, traveled to every corner and inch of this district, spoke with hundreds of people, just a phenomenal campaign. Perry is now a member of the East Hampton Democrats, and we're lucky to have him at the helm this evening. Perry Gershon.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. This should be a fun event. Let me introduce the candidates, bring them on to start. Nancy Goroff and John Avlon.
That's gone the wrong way.
We'll start in a minute, but in terms of format, we're going to have 60-second questions after a 3-minute introduction by each of you. No one had a draw first, so John, you're going to go first. Just arbitrary. But before you start, I just want everyone to remember, as we listen, we are all Democrats. This is a friendly forum, and from my point of view, more important than anything else you hear from them, you've all got to support the winner of this race. We win when we stick together. We do well, we're competitive when we stick together, and when we fight, we lose, particularly in a district like this. All right, that's my stump speech. John.
Thanks, Perry. Or should I say Mr. Met. I'm John Avlon. I'm a husband, a dad of 2 young kids, the grandson of immigrants and a native New Yorker, live in Sag Harbor. I've known many of you in this room for a long time. Some people know me from my time as the editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast. I'm a presidential historian who's written several books, most recently on Lincoln, and most recently, CNN political analyst and anchor. I left that job just a month ago to run for Congress here in the 1st District. I did it because I was so fundamentally concerned about the state of the race, the state of our nation, and the stakes for this country and community that I love. I've been, watching this district not get the respect it deserves as the swing district it is. I was frustrated to see not being considered the battleground district that it is. And as I looked and I was talking to my wife, Margaret, about the stakes of this race, realizing that Donald Trump was indeed going to be the Republican nominee again, we realized it's all on the line now. It really is. This is the most serious election in terms of the trajectory of the 21st century and the trajectory of our country that we could ever imagine. We've never had a major party nominee run on an authoritarian platform praising dictators. And so I didn't want to look at my kids and say that I could have done more when it mattered most. I thought about the sacrifices my grandparents made to come to this country and how much they believed in this country. And I looked at the stakes for Suffolk County. You know, a first-term congressman who's the first of the 18 guys who won in a district that won by Joe Biden, who immediately endorses Donald Trump, who has contempt for bipartisan problem solving, who's far too far right for this district. And I thought we could do better. We can do better. We can win this district. And that's why I got in this race. And I've been incredibly heartened to see the response since we got in. The response from all of you, the response online, the enthusiasm, the energy, and I was incredibly honored to get Fred Thiel's endorsement today. He is a legend in our community. So I'm here. I'm looking forward to a civil, substantive conversation with Nancy. You know, we're all Democrats here. And when we unite, we can flip this seat. We can win this seat. There's nothing more important for our community and our country that we win here, because the road to Democrats controlling the House of Representatives can go right through CD1. We will win.
I want to thank Anna and East Hampton Dems, Perry, for your moderation here, and thank you all for being here. You all know me as the scientist who ran against Lee Zeldin in 2020. I want to tell you about what I've been doing since then. We're going to hear a lot tonight. We've already heard about the importance of democracy, and I believe we need to fight back to preserve our democracy. So I want to tell you about what I've been doing on that score since the last time I ran and why I'm running again. In 2021, in a school district next door to mine, Smithtown, 3 right-wing extremists were elected to the school board. Democracy isn't only about the House of Representatives and who is president. We have to be focusing at every level. This was a wake-up call for many of us, and so we created a new nonprofit called the Long Island Strong Schools Alliance to mobilize people to advocate for our public schools and to make sure that there are good policies in our schools so that every child feels like their school is a place where they belong, no matter who they are. We also work to get good people elected to school boards, and we have made a difference, including in Smithtown and in a host of other districts on Long Island. Building teams like that, building community, so that we build our democracy, build our democratic strength with a little d and a big D. That's what I've been devoting my time to, and that's why I'm running. Because right now, Nick LaLota is not protecting our democracy. He is not there for the people of this district. We know from what he's done and hasn't done with regard to immigration, women's right to choose, and reproductive freedom, and even getting our deduction on state and local taxes back to its full amount. He talks about things, but he doesn't actually deliver ever. All he's interested in is nice publicity and talking points. He doesn't want to actually get the job done. So I am running to make sure that we are protecting our democracy, including reproductive freedoms, protecting our kids from gun violence and bullying in school, protecting our environment from the extremes of climate change and threats to our clean water, and building an economy that works for everyone. We've been doing the work of building our community and building that strength across the district and across Suffolk County and Long Island. And I'm excited now to be working again to win this seat, and we will do everything we need to flip it. Look forward to the conversation.
Okay, candidates, thank you for the opening statements. Why don't we start with Nancy this time, and then we'll go to John. So first question, and 60 seconds for the answer. What have you done that you think best qualifies you to represent CD1 in Washington? And why are you the strongest candidate to win in November?
Thank you. So, to pick up where I just left off, to beat Nick LaLota, we need to inspire voters, we need to hold him accountable, and show a contrast with him. And we need to make sure that voters believe that we represent their values and will represent them in DC. We know that Nick LaLota doesn't do any of that. My background, having been a long-time committed fighter on climate, an educator at Stony Brook University, which is one of the top engines of social mobility in our country, not just our district, and having been a community leader, puts me in an excellent position to inspire people, to let them know that they can trust me, and to show a real contrast with Nick LaLota.
I like the standing up thing, so I guess we'll just keep doing that. Look, this election is about being able to communicate clearly and play offense on democratic ideas. I think we saw what happened in New York 3, and we saw that candidate selection matters and message matters. And I've spoken to Democrats across this district who are frustrated at the fact that we haven't been playing offense enough. We haven't been making a clear enough argument on the issues. And we know from what happened in New York 3, we need to seize the center. You know, I've spent most of my career as a journalist, but also focusing on how to win over independent voters, how to combat hyperpartisanship, because the polarization is killing our country. And to do that, and to win this district in particular, because God bless, it's one of the few swing districts in New York State and frankly in the country, we need to be able to not just energize the base, we need to win over a majority of independents, and we need to win over a sliver of Republicans that are anti-Trump. And we can do that. But we need to do that by playing a different kind of campaign than we've done in the past. We need to energize this electorate. We need to reach out. We need to play offense. That's what I can do, and that's what I will do.
So John, the next one to you as well. What would be your priorities in Congress if elected? And why do you think these priorities reflect the priorities of CD1 constituents and of Suffolk County in general?
Sure. You know, the constant refrain when I knock on doors during this petition process and just talking to folks, number one thing Democrats say is we got to stop Donald Trump. He's dangerous to democracy. The second thing they all say, affordability. We've got a crisis of affordability. Average house is over $600,000. And so I think the first thing Democrats need to do to put more money in the pockets of working folks is restore SALT. Right, here's the fact. Donald Trump and the Republicans raised our taxes. They did it out of spite as part of a political stunt. And they're too invested in that game to ever do their jobs and repeal it no matter what they say. Democrats can and will when we take control of Congress. But I think we can do more than that. And by the way, for you know, family living in Smithtown making around $180,000 a year, that would be around $3,800 more in their pocket. Right, add to that expanding the child tax credit. That's real money in people's pocket can deal with the affordability crisis. Beyond that, of course, combating climate change, doing everything we can to build the middle class, directing the infrastructure funds to improve our transportation, to make sure we're doing other things to help heal the divide in our country, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, civic education. I could go on and on. But the top line, we need to address the affordability crisis and make people feel that democracy works for working families again.
Thank you. Nancy?
All of the issues that John mentioned, that I've mentioned before, are all critically important. But for those of you who have lived in Suffolk County for a long time, you know how complicated the different layers of government are, and that people never have any idea who they're supposed to go to solve which problem. In my view, the number one responsibility of any elected official at any level, and Tommy John, you know what I'm talking about, is to help your constituents get to the services they need at whatever level of government it is. So my first priority in setting up my congressional office will be making sure we have a top-notch, fully transparent, easily accessible constituent services program so that when somebody comes to us trying to figure out how to get a stoplight, which is not a congressional issue, and we all know it's not a congressional issue, to get a stoplight in your neighborhood. We will be there to help them get connected with the right part of the government. That's how we convince people that democracy is working for them, by making it easy and accessible.
So this next question is one to hopefully let us, the audience, learn a little bit more about how you think and who you'd like to emulate. Name 1, 2, or 3 current members of the House that you most admire or intend to emulate, and why?
Of the House. It's a great question. No, go ahead, Nancy, that's fine.
Nancy, sorry.
Please.
I have been really inspired by so many members of Congress who I've met. I will pick 2. It's hard, but I'm going to pick 2. One is Bill Foster, who is an easy one for me because he is the PhD scientist in Congress, and he's told his supporters that they should support me because it'll cut his workload in half. As somebody who can help explain complicated science to other members as well as to constituents, because there are so many problems that have a scientific component. The other is the amazing Lois Frankel, who has taken her efforts in the House entirely to focus on getting more women leaders in the House. And I'm very proud to have her endorsement of both of these members and of Lois Frankel's group, Elect Democratic Women, which helps get more women into the House. And so I will certainly be doing everything I can to learn from both of them.
Thank you, Nancy.
Name just a few. Seth Moulton. He's a young Democrat. He's a veteran, he's a friend of mine, but I think he shows how you can stand up and inject more the sense of liberal patriotism that I think we need to rekindle in this country. He represents standing up to people in power. I think Richie Torres has been enormously effective at building broad coalitions. And so I think that's another one. And then I think Abigail Spanberger. I mean, she's actually running for governor now in Virginia, but she won in a district that people thought was out of reach. And she did it by building those broad coalitions you need to do to win in a district that some people had written off. So those 3.
Wow, great answers. So we're going to go out of order a little bit because the next questions are different for each of the 2 of you. And I'm going to go in the order written here. So Nancy, and these are tough ones. Nancy, you lost by a substantial margin in 2020. How are you going to make 2024 different and win this time?
Gee, I never thought you'd ask that, Perry. 2024 is a different election from 2020, right? It is not Lee Zeldin. It is a freshman incumbent that nobody can even remember who it is who represents them. It's not a pandemic, so it can actually talk to people face to face, which for me is something really, really important. The district is a bit better because of redistricting, so we have that as well. But I want to talk about me and where I am now. So I learned a lot. As a first-time candidate, I learned a ton. And, I put myself in good company with people like Barack Obama and your favorite Abraham Lincoln, who ran and lost and ran again. So there's what I learned, but there's also the connections I've made across the district through my work with the Long Island Strong Schools Alliance. And the fact that this is something that has mobilized parents across the district because we're helping their kids. And that network is incredibly strong and powerful, and I'm very proud of it.
Thank you. John, you will be accused of carpetbagging. In fact, you already have been by the GOP.
Yes.
How do you get over this potential handicap and win?
I appreciate the question, Perry, because of course you were accused of carpetbagging.
I was indeed.
And I will note that he did better against Lee Zeldin than anyone, just as a mathematical. Look, first of all, I think that New Yorkers understand it's about the quality of the candidate and that candidates come from all over, and folks in Suffolk County understand there's a dynamic relationship with people across our state. I don't think you can get boxed out by having people ignore the fact that I love this community, and I've got deep roots in this community. I look around this room, and I've seen people who've known me for over a decade. And so I think that carpetbagger attack doesn't hold water at a time when people know that more than anything, we need to win. And that's the message. This is not, the fact that GOP attacked me the day I got in, of course, is a badge of honor. And I'm being attacked by, folks, all over because I disrupted the dynamics of this race. I was incredibly pleased to see that House Majority PAC put this race back on the map. They're going to invest in it. So I take out the attacks. I take them as they come. The fact is I've shaken up the race because all of a sudden folks know that Nick LaLota is in real trouble with me in the race.
Well, let me add that, as you both know, you will be attacked, and you have to make the best of it. One of my favorite attacks from 2018 that I still cherish was the tweet from Don Jr. against me. That was a real honor. Called me unhinged.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well done, sir.
John, to you. What do you think are the issues that affect the East End that can be best addressed by Congress, and how can you have an impact? Also for Suffolk County, if the answer is different than for the East End.
Look, look, we are a coastal community. That's true throughout the district, and obviously combating climate change is a massive responsibility. I think what the Army Corps of Engineers did that was put in place, that Tim Bishop was a big part of getting to come here, in terms of FIMP and putting back in the beaches, recirculating the sand, that's a step in the right direction for climate change, but a lot more needs to be done. It requires actually a member of Congress who's looking at those solutions, and Republicans keep trying to gut that stuff. I think Tim Bishop, when he served on the Water and the Water Resources Environment Committee of Transportation, that's a place I'd like to be because we can make a difference in water quality and combat climate change. That's a concrete role that a member of Congress can play for our community. I also think transportation in general. I would like to see us get money for rail sidings so that we can get more trains coming up and down, increase transportation, taking advantage of the changing nature of work, and reducing traffic, which is something that frustrates everybody. But the lens through which to look everything is we need to reunite the nation. To do that, we need to rebuild the middle class. And so that's the prism I think we need to look at. What can rebuild the middle class across Suffolk County and across this country?
Nancy?
Affordability is clearly on everybody's mind, and we need to make sure that we are helping people where they live. That means, of course, fixing the deduction cap, the SALT cap. It means bringing back the child tax credit extensions that were part of the, I can't remember which one it was, American Recovery Act. And it means making sure that we are investing in affordable workforce housing across the district. This is something which is just an incredibly serious issue. When I was at Stony Brook working on entrepreneurship programs, I heard so many business owners saying that this was their top concern, that their kids could not afford to live here, and that they were worried about being able to afford to be here when they retire. That has not gotten any better. And this district is incredibly diverse socioeconomically, but across the district, this is a really serious problem for everyone, and we need to make sure we're taking action.
To Nancy.
Oh, you're mixing up that way?
Yeah. One of the most potent attacks on Democrats this is to both of you, but Nancy first. One of the most potent attacks on Democrats is the country's strategy to tackle immigration. Mm-hmm. How will you approach this issue in Congress? And equally important, how will you approach it on the campaign trail? Because you know the Republicans will try to use it against you.
Immigration is a prime example of Nick LaLota's only caring about talking points and not actually solving the problems. It is a serious issue where we need comprehensive immigration reform that includes both border security and a pathway to citizenship for the dreamers and people who have been working and paying taxes here. Thank you. But the Democrats agreed in the Senate through hard negotiations with conservative Republican James Lankford to forget about the pathway to citizenship part for now and focus on the border security pieces. And they were willing to do that negotiation. Nick LaLota just said, I don't know what's in the deal, but I'm not going to like it, before it was public what was in the deal. He is vulnerable on this issue. All he did was try to impeach and succeed in impeaching the Secretary of Homeland Security, and we need to hold him accountable for just talking and not doing.
Don?
We need more legal immigration and less illegal immigration. That's the common sense that everybody understands. And as Democrats, we know the way to get that done is through comprehensive immigration reform. Benefiting the dreamers, H-1A visas for agricultural workers. This benefits everybody. Getting folks out of the shadows, pathway to citizenship. But the other piece of that needs to be more border security, border enforcement, and applying the rules and the laws so people have faith that our system works and that our borders are secure. That faith has been undermined, and it undermines support for immigration, which, lest we forget, makes us stronger, economically, culturally, and in every possible way. But it needs to be done the right way. And I will say, it wasn't just that Nick said no to the bipartisan border security deal that Democrats agreed to ensure Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan were funded. It was that he put out a tweet unnecessarily mocking it. He put out a tweet mocking Senator James Lankford, the conservative Oklahoma senator, saying, my 9-year-old did a better job negotiating bedtime than Lankford did on that deal. The deal that the Border Patrol had endorsed, the deal that the Wall Street Journal said was the toughest bill that would get done. It's that contempt for bipartisanship that bothers me. It's that he, listening to Donald Trump as a Trump flunky, said, I'd rather fundraise and fearmonger than fix this problem. And that's a firing offense.
Okay, John, this one to you first. The situations in Israel and the Ukraine are foreign conflicts that the United States finds itself embroiled in. One is an issue that tends to unite Democrats, while the other is tending to divide us. What is your opinion on these conflicts and their respective combatants?
I think it's important to look at politics with a sense of perspective, which is the thing we have least of. Whenever possible, when things seem muddy, try to imagine how it's going to look in 20 years, and it imposes perspective on our problems. What infuriates me about Republicans' refusal to stand up to Russian aggression isn't just that they flipped on a dime from their historic position on Donald Trump, but it's that the moral clarity that the moment provides has been willfully lost. We need to defend democracy. Joe Biden's right. The defining struggle of our time is autocracy versus democracy. We need to stand up for democracy. We need to stand up for freedom. We need to stand up for Vladimir Putin. We've got the moral high ground and the common ground on this issue, and we need to support them. With Israel, look, I lived through 9/11 up close, as many of you did. When a country is as brutally and viciously attacked by terrorists as Israel was on October 7th, I don't believe there's room for a lot of whataboutism and moral relativism, and I was nauseated by the anti-Semitism that spelled out as folks in the wake of that attack. I think we need to stand with the victims of terrorism, not the people who blame the victims. But we also need to make sure, as the Biden administration is, that that humanitarian support is being provided to Gaza, that we're looking for an off-ramp and ultimately a two-state solution, because that's the only way we'll have peace in the region.
Nancy?
American leadership depends on supporting our allies. And we know how important it is, as you said, it unites Democrats to support Ukraine. There are also plenty of Republicans who still remember that Putin is an autocrat. And so we need to hold Republicans responsible for the fact that they are not willing to support our allies. In Israel, as you and I both know, Perry, as longtime J Street supporters, there is a long, long history. It didn't start on October 7th. It didn't start in 1948. Israel has the right to defend itself and must be allowed to defend itself. At the same time, what they are doing now is not really helping them become more safe. And the Biden administration has, I think, done an amazing job of putting pressure on Israel to increase humanitarian aid and move towards a demilitarized Palestinian state while also making clear that Israel is a democratic ally and they have the right to defend themselves. So I'm with the Biden administration on this completely.
Okay, the next two questions, first to Nancy, then to John, different questions. Nancy, you're experienced in running campaigns, organizing, and fundraising. What are the biggest challenges a CD1 Democrat will face, and how will you conquer them?
We need to get our voters out and make sure that we are speaking to people across the political spectrum who are willing to listen, which means we need to be listening to them. So we have instituted in our field program, our organizing program, that we are making sure when people go out and knock on doors, what they are hearing is coming back to us. So we can make sure that we are then reflecting that in our messaging and in our thinking. We also are using relational organizing, which is where we get people who are volunteers to communicate not just by text banking with random people. Those of you who've done that, you know how low the contact rates are. I see nodding. We're going to have people texting their own friends and family and letting us know which of those people they've reached and are supportive. So we're going to be using both this listening and the relational organizing to make sure we are turning people out and motivating them.
John, you are a newcomer to running for office, but have been participating in the political process for some time. Why are you running now? And I know you've answered this a little bit already, but...
Yeah, I mean, I have. I will say it's fascinatingly different being the candidate than covering a campaign. But I'm also enjoying it. I feel enormously invigorated because there's a difference between talking and doing. And that's why I wanted to stand up, because the stakes just were so stark. I think when you look at this moment with a sense of perspective, we'll see that we all need to stand up. We all need to get out of our comfort zone. We all need to do what we can to save our country, to save our community, and restore, I think, have this fever break, and then start to build a new kind of politics. I'm running because I didn't want to just, as much as I loved my job previously, I couldn't stomach sitting on a political panel offering opinions at a time that was this serious for our country. I wanted to do more. I wanted to get in the arena. And a lot of people do look at me and they say, you're crazy. Why would you do that? Because we've made running for office seem dangerous and indecent. We've made it seem like it's a terrible decision for any sane person. But that just seeds the ground to the ideologues and the extremists. And that's what we need to do, is weigh in differently. We need to apply a different kind of politics. We need to reach out. We need to make the case. And that's what I think we can do just mathematically to win CD1. We need to play offense, reach out, and persuade again.
Okay, this one's for both of you. John, you're first. Not long ago, CD1 was a blue district represented by Congressman Tim Bishop. In recent years, it's turned dark red. Why do you think the district has leaned so far right, and how do you plan to thrive given the current environment?
Look, I think the basic math of the district shows us that we need Democrats who can win over independents and even a slice of Republicans. That's what the math indicates. You can't simply play to the base and win here. But I do think that, reports of the Democrats' demise on Long Island has been greatly overstated. Go ask Tom Suozzi, right? And I never bought it, this inevitable red wave wafting over Long Island. That's just warmed over conventional wisdom thinking. That's generals fighting the last battle. We all know what happened here in 22. Lee Zeldin was running for governor, and the Democrats didn't play offense enough in Suffolk County. And so the whole ticket suffered. A county executive race isn't indicative as a turnout model as a presidential race. So we're looking at a fundamentally different turnout model where the stakes are incredibly high. And so I'm incredibly bullish about our chances to win this district. And then I think we can show that there's a blueprint for flipping swing districts back. This district is absolutely winnable with the right kind of Democrat if we build the broadest possible coalition. And that's what we can do. And we can rewrite the rules, and everyone will be paying attention after that fact.
We absolutely can win here. And we need to win here. We need to build up our democracy from the top down, from the bottom up. The last election, absolutely decided by turnout. In order to win in 2024, let's think about that. What does it mean? It means getting people out to vote. And it means making sure that they go all the way down, past all those judges, to vote for Congress. Right? You were happy you were early in there, right, Andrea? You have to actually make people think it makes a difference. That's what all the research shows. People don't show up if they don't think it makes a difference, which means you've got to inspire them. You've got to show a contrast with Nick LaLota. You have to tell them that, have their friends tell them that it makes a difference and that their friends care about it. That's what we're going to do to inspire people and get rid of Nick LaLota. And we're very excited to do that work.
Okay, Nancy, this one's your first, and then John. How do you plan to win this primary?
I'm just going to call all my friends and tell them to vote. We are working hard. We have a great campaign organization. We have so many supporters across the district. From the last time I ran, people who are very excited that I'm running again. I get so much great feedback from people, but also from people I didn't know in 2020 who have gotten involved through the Long Island Strong Schools Alliance. And we will continue to build our networks through our relational organizing. We will make sure we have the resources to communicate effectively. We will make sure that people are hearing why they should care about me representing them because of my background as an educator, as a climate fighter, as a community leader. These are things that speak to people in the primary just like they do in the general election. We're excited to do the work, and I'm so proud of our team.
I have been inspired by the reaction to my entering this race. We've been in this race less than 3 weeks, and I've heard from people across the district and some of you about the jolt of energy it's brought to this campaign, about the sense of optimism. And it's been reflected in the data. I mean, it's been reflected in, our opening video getting over 2 million views, an enormous amount of support, both financial and from local grassroots activists. People feel a sense that we can win. That optimism trickles down. Whether I talk to progressive activists or people in Smithtown, there is a sense that, you know what, this thing is winnable. That kind of energy is palpable. And I think ultimately it's a question about the pragmatic question of who is best equipped to win. I have enormous respect for Nancy. I voted for her, in 2020. I think everyone here did. But I do think that there's just a pragmatic sense that there is no substitute for victory in this election. There's none. And so that's causing people to take notice. And I think we can bring a jolt of energy to this primary and translate that directly to the fight to Nick LaLota in the fall.
Okay, this next question's to both of you. John, you're going to go first, and then this is the last one of my questions for now, and then we'll come back at the end if we have time, but we have some audience questions after this. In a race as important as CD1, some Democrats believe that a primary is incredibly damaging to our chances of flipping the seat blue. How do you justify your participation in this primary? Also, tell us how involved you plan to remain should you not win. Keep in mind that there are different levels of support, and not just pledging support to the winner is sufficient.
Sure. Look, I am all in on this election, and I will support whoever wins, and I believe Nancy will too, and everyone here will. We need to win. And that means being all in because the stakes are so high that this is not a drill. Look, I think that when we look at the stakes of this race, we'll all remain galvanized. We have to. Losing is not an alternative. This fight is too important for Democrats to lose. There's just too much at stake. So look, I think that we can work together. We need to work together. We need to be civil and substantive. The danger is when primaries turn into wasting millions of dollars attacking each other. A friend of mine told me a quick story the other day. His daughter was running for third grade president, and she wanted some advice. Sixth, I'm sorry. I'm a journalist, so I like getting the details right. She said, how should I campaign? So he said, call up Uncle Neil. He'd run for office in another state. And he said, you know what? You should reach out, talk to everybody, ask them what's important to them, and listen. And then she turned to her dad, what do you think? She said, I think you should go negative on Stacey out of the gate as hard as you can. There are two different ways to run elections and campaigns. I believe in the first one. We need to reach out. We need to be civil. We need to be substantive and make sure that we are focusing our fire on Nick LaLota in the fall, because that's what it's going to take.
All right, before you go, Nancy, to follow up, I'm going to ask you the same follow-up too. Will you pledge not to go negative in the campaign, and how strongly will you communicate that pledge not to go negative to your supporters, including your PACs?
Me?
You first.
I think my actions, I hope, make it clear that I am not intending to go negative. That is not my desire, because I think that's destructive. I think that, ad hominem attacks between people, whisper campaigns. There have been, politics ain't beanbag, but I am not returning fire on some of the negative attacks that have been directed at me, because I think it's destructive. We need to elevate this debate. And I believe that tone comes from the top of any organization. I know that I've disrupted the calculus of this race, and that's challenging for some folks. And I'm happy to answer any question from anybody directly. Delighted to do it. But it does bother me when mud gets thrown, because I think that only does the Republicans dirty work for them. So I will elevate this debate, and I will not go negative on this.
First question.
Do you want me to repeat it, or?
Yeah, the first question was.
In a
primary.
race as important as CD1, some Democrats believe that a primary is incredibly damaging to our chances of flipping the seat blue. How do you justify your participation in the primary? And also, tell us how involved you plan to remain should you not win. Keep in mind that there are different levels of being involved.
Okay. We have a room full here. The reason we have a room full here in March is because we have a primary. This is how we energize people, and this isn't the first room that has been full. Long before John got into the race, although I'm sure it was more than a twinkle in your eye in February, we had a full room at the Brookhaven Town Democratic Committee for the then 4 candidates who were in the race. Primaries get people excited, they get people energized, they get our teams built, they are good. I have been here doing the work from before I ran, when I ran last time, since I ran, supporting the other candidates who were running in 2022, and now. And I will continue to be here doing the work, no matter what happens in June, no matter what happens in November, because this is my home. This is where I raised my kids. This is where I built my career. And I am dedicated to flipping this seat blue and building a Democratic strength here in Suffolk County. It's what I've been putting all of my time and effort into.
Okay. Second part, will you pledge not to go negative in the campaign, and how strongly will you communicate this to your supporters, including your PACs?
My focus is on telling my story and why people should support me. That is going to be my focus. And what people do, we have already seen some comments from my opponent, which I find objectionable and mansplaining. But we will continue to move forward in as positive a way as we can.
I get 2 of these, right?
Yeah.
Well, one, just point of clarification, well, first of all, I'm actually just curious, in what way do you think I've made negative comments about you that are mansplaining? Because I'm genuinely curious.
Nancy Goroff has already run once, and we saw how that worked out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I actually don't think that's negative. I think that's important to understand. I don't think talking about the results of the last election mathematically is a negative personal attack. I don't. So if that needs to be, made, that distinction needs to be made, that distinction needs to be made. I think we need to deal with reality. We need to deal with math. But I will ask, because the night before the special election in New York 3, your team put out a negative fundraising email about me. So, I mean, I'm not going to do that to you. I think that's destructive. Are you saying that you renounce it, or you're going to continue that? Just for point of clarification for the audience.
Thank you, John. I think it's important, like you said, for people to know your past. And for you, your history seems to start in 2013. Occasionally you mention that you did work for
9/11?
Rudy Giuliani at 9/11, 2001. You rarely mention that you worked for him in 2008 when he was running for president. You rarely mention that you were at the Manhattan Institute as a fellow.
So let's talk about it. It's great.
So those are things that you seem to choose to not mention.
Well, I appreciate you going back into my past, and I know that you've been doing a good deal of this because there are consultants who depend on that kind of work. Look, we are our whole lives. People evolve over their lives. I worked for Rudy, as I've said, when he was sane. And I make no excuses for the work I did during 9/11, where my team and I wrote the eulogies for 343 firefighters and 37 Port Authority police officers and 26 New York City police officers. That was a formative moment in my life, and I think all real New Yorkers understand that was a moment where we were united as a nation. I was proud to be part of it, and that will always be an important part of me. We have done lots of things over the course of our lives. So I just want to be clear, you're admitting that you have gone, negative to me, because I'm just talking about math. But let's talk about history. The Manhattan Institute is now unrecognizable as an organization. It was once a place that celebrated Democrats like Cory Booker and Jerry Brown when they were mayors of Newark and Oakland, respectively. I actually wrote a few pieces for there and was chased out because I was criticizing Republicans for work that became my book, Wingnuts, How the Lunatic Fringe is Hijacking America. I think the point is, we shouldn't try to make each other into scary people to rally our supporters to try to win the primary. I think that's actually the kind of negative tax that people are talking about. I don't think talking about objective election results is negative. I think that's just math. I think that's just a record. I think that's just reality.
So, point taken on the negatives, but not on the just math. Because, as I've already pointed out, people that you have held up as heroes and as role models have also run and lost and run again and won. And
Are you comparing yourself to Abraham Lincoln?
No, but there are many examples.
Of course there are. Of course there are.
In fact, it's considered more or less a truism in politics that running is a great way to win when you run again. So I just think I did not say anything to a reporter about your chances, except that I welcome you to the fight. And I do welcome you to the fight because I think it does provide tremendous energy here. But if we're allowed to talk about numbers, but we're not allowed to talk about biography and dates, then that seems a little unusual to me.
I'm going to ask the candidates to stop the exchange here, because we have questions from the audience, and we have to let the audience have their share. We actually have two questions that are roughly the same, so I'll put them together. And Nancy, you're first. How will you address the affordable housing crisis on the East End and in Suffolk County generally?
Yeah, let's be clear. The affordable housing crisis is bad everywhere in the district. And we have incredible diversity of socioeconomics in this district, but affordable housing is something that is a struggle for people everywhere. So as I said, we need to get back the SALT deduction in its entirety, because that is real money in pockets for people here. And the only way we can do that is by flipping the seat, flipping the house. We need to expand the child tax credit, because that is also real money in people's pockets and makes a huge difference. And we need to increase the tax credits for affordable housing, both for individuals and for developers, so that they can build more, so that we have more housing. All of that has to be done, all of the affordable housing piece has to be done with local approval and local processes. But what the federal government can do is put money into this by giving tax credits, which encourage developers to actually build more housing, and we need that desperately.
Is it the same question about housing?
Same question.
Okay, so yeah, let's focus on housing. Average cost of a house in Suffolk County is over $600,000. That combined with interest rates is causing real frustration, and families who've been here for generations are getting squeezed. We need to build more housing. We need it for transportation. We need it for workers. Let's talk about a couple ways to do it. And obviously, we talked about affordability earlier, so I won't repeat about SALT and the child tax credit. One, I think that there's things we can do for the ADUs to actually allow people to build additional houses on their property that can make more multi-generational housing so people don't have to leave. I think that can also be a revenue stream. I think that's positive. I think with the governor's proposal fell flat to some folks initially because it seemed like we were going to impose, big buildings on communities. Obviously, any new housing needs to be done in conjunction with communities. It needs to be consistent with the historic character of communities. But I think there are other ideas that are incredibly exciting. There's beginning to be a move to repurpose the footprint of old malls. Right? Already they're connected to the community. They're decent road space. Some are, in our communities, and we can actually build affordable housing tiered on it and take advantage of the structure. All of a sudden, you've got restaurants, bars. You've got basically a pop-up community that can be a perfect place for affordable housing, for temporary workers, and for small dwellings. That's a way to do it that doesn't impinge on historic communities. So we need all of the above, but it needs to be done in conjunction with communities. The federal government can help and should and lead.
Okay, the next one, John, you go first, and it's to both of you. And you touched on it a little bit already. Do you agree that there should be an immediate ceasefire in Gaza?
Not unless the hostages are released as part of that immediate ceasefire.
Nancy?
This is such a complicated question, such a complicated issue. Of course, we need a stop in fighting so that there can be an increase in humanitarian aid. And I'm really excited about the Biden administration's efforts to actually bring in aid directly, and we need more of that. We also need the hostages freed. We need to be moving towards an eventual solution, and I'm excited to see that some steps are being taken by the Palestinian government and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank at the Biden administration's insistence. That is, that they had a very big change in their cabinet. They are starting to deal with the corruption issues. All of this is necessary to find a long-term solution. In the short term, if they can have a negotiated cessation in fighting of whatever duration, we know it will save lives. So the sooner they can get to that stage, the better.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to change this one slightly, make it chronological, and I like this question. Perry, myself, Nancy, and Bridget were all the most qualified candidate on the November ballot, and none of us won. What lessons have been learned to elect a Democrat in November, and how will you apply them?
So, as I've already said, in order to beat Nick LaLota, we need to show a big contrast. Thankfully, we're not running against Lee Zeldin, as you and I both had to do. When you ran, there was much lower voter turnout and much higher voter turnout among Democrats, but much lower among Republicans. When I ran, it was a presidential year. We had incredibly high voter turnout. 100,000 more people voted than in 2018. And I got the most votes that any Democrat has ever gotten in this district. But so many Republicans showed up. This year is going to be different. We are not seeing the same energy, perhaps on either side. We need to make sure that our folks show up and that we are talking on the talking across all the spectrum, we need to make sure people believe that our candidate reflects their values. That means going on the offense on things like immigration, public safety, and it means really talking to people about the issues that matter to them.
Look, we need to learn the lessons of the last election. We need to look at the new district lines. Albany made it a little bit more difficult for us. That increases the opportunity and the obligation for us to put forward a candidate who can not only inspire and fire up Democrats, along with a great Democratic ticket, but also win over independent voters and a slice of Republicans who I believe are up for grabs if we put forward a candidate who can communicate with them and appeal to them. We need that kind of candidate. Look, Lee Zeldin won in 2016 by 15 points. You know, you got him within a 4-point margin. Nancy, it was 10 points. It's not about the money. It's not just about the cycle. You know, if we get, you know, there's crosstab voting, but it does no good if people are voting Biden-Zeldin, for example, as unfortunately around 20,000 did in 2020. So we need to make sure we're putting forward a different kind of candidate who changes the math, who deals with the math of this district. And I think we can do that in a way that unifies us, inspires people, and draws on the wisdom and experience of everyone who's run. All good people, but we need to do something different, and we can together, and we can win this together and shock the world and rewrite the playbook.
Okay, we have one more audience question, and then I have a couple, but at 8:20, we're going to stop and go to closing statements. So please highlight your work with labor unions.
Sure. I'm a member of a union, SAG-AFTRA. I have run a newsroom of a unionized news organization, the Daily Beast, and I negotiated those contracts. And a lot of people in the news business say, well, you know, unionized newsrooms are bad. I say no. They're inevitable. It's the right thing to do, especially at a time when people are getting hip to the fact that large corporations often treat their workers or whole divisions like disposable commodities. You know, I said earlier, and I believe this to my heart, you know, it's not an accident that the middle of our politics has been hollowed out at the same time that the middle of our economy has been hollowed out. What created the middle class? Unions, the GI Bill, and community colleges. Those are the kind of things we need to draw on, we need to strengthen on, we need to work with. So I think that is absolutely a priority. I think President Biden's been saying this since the 80s. He's acting on it. The economy's starting to come back. We're reshoring essential manufacturing. We need to do that. In New York, that means union jobs, getting the job done right. And one example is actually what CWA is doing with the infrastructure out here with broadband. We need better broadband and cell reception and union jobs to build the future of this industry, this future of Suffolk County as a tech corridor. I believe it can be and should be and will be.
I am a union member. I've been a union member through the New York State Union of Teachers, NYS, my entire time at Stony Brook. And I have worked with the unions for the graduate students who are also unionized at Stony Brook, both through researchers and teachers. The unions are a pathway to the middle class, and they are what built the middle class, as President Biden said the other day in his awesome State of the Union address. We need to make sure that we are strengthening unions, and some of that has happened already through executive action by the Biden administration. They have undone some of the decades and decades of weakening of the National Labor Relations Board. That has happened over many decades and many administrations. And Joe Biden has been the most pro-labor president that many union leaders have told me they've ever seen. We need to make sure we're talking not only to union leaders who understand that, but to union members, and making sure we're hearing their concerns at the same time that we are continuing to support unions as much as possible.
Okay, so one, maybe two more questions, depending on the clock.
Are we doing questions in the audience?
No, but those were the audience questions, the last four.
I'm sorry. Okay, great.
So Nancy, to you first. Healthcare remains one of the most important issues in the country. And at least when I ran in 2018, it was the great uniting issue for Democrats. It was the one issue in this district that was a real winner for us. Where do you stand on improving access to health care for those who don't have access to affordable health care today? And how important an issue will this be for your campaign?
So, healthcare is something that is a human right. Every person deserves access to high-quality, affordable healthcare. For me, the question is, how do we get from where we are today to having as many people as possible covered with high-quality, affordable healthcare? We know that we have many reasons, many barriers to putting in a fully public healthcare system. We have negotiated contracts from unions that include coverage for healthcare. We have Medicaid, which covers much more than just healthcare, and so there are logistical challenges, and there are political challenges. So we're not starting from scratch. What I support is lowering the age of Medicare so that more people have access to it, and allowing people who are below the minimum age to buy into Medicare as a public option. That way, by lowering the age over time to 50, we are covering the vast majority of major health expenses that people have. And by allowing people to buy in, we are providing a public option so that we're not spending government dollars, taxpayer dollars on insurance company profits.
Any question? This is something that comes up all the time when I'm talking to folks across the district, whether it's in Huntington or out in Montauk. There's a real frustration that for all the gains we've made with the hard-fought gains with Obamacare, which remember they've tried to kill over I think 20,000 times in some way, that the gains haven't been enough because premiums are still too high. The bureaucracy is still too much. Small business owners in particular feel this, their employees feel this. And so I think the answer is a public option, which by the way Barack Obama wanted to do when he was working on the ACA and was negotiated away. I think that was, now's the time to build on that foundation, and that is a critical option. I'm a pro-choice kind of guy across the board. Give people a public option, a new choice, and that will help bring more folks into these broader pools, and it may create an opening for the kind of transition that some folks want. Good people can disagree, but I think we saw the drag-out fight with so much misinformation around the simple, President Obama simply trying to bring what Mitt Romney had done in Massachusetts to the United States, and he was called a socialist. We need to do a public option. That's something that we can do. It is achievable. It's being done in states right now. It can lower costs and expand the pool, and there are other worthy ideas as well. I think that is worth exploring, but we need to make sure we are not creating the kind of backlash that hurts people. But there is no reason in the United States of America that people should go bankrupt when they get sick. That is morally outrageous.
Okay, it's 8:20, so I think it's time for closing statements.
Okay.
Who went first? Nancy went first.
No, yeah. Nancy should go first. I went first.
He went first.
Okay.
Nancy should go.
Good.
I want to thank you all again for being here. We know the stakes are high. We know how important this is. We are ready to do the work and work with you, building the team to actually turn this seat. And I just want to say to you, I'm not here tonight because I'm running for Congress. I'm running for Congress because I live here. This is my home and where I've been doing the work, building teams, building democracy for years. And this is a continuation of what I've been doing. Very excited to continue it and flip this seat, and would love to have your help.
We need to win. We need to win in a way that reflects our values. We need to win to do all the defense of democracy we know is necessary. We need to win, and the way to do that is to build the broadest possible coalition. And then we need to start building a new kind of politics that starts bringing people together, because there's much more that unites us than divides us as Americans and New Yorkers and folks in Suffolk County and across Long Island. The stakes couldn't be higher. A vote for Nick LaLota is a vote for Mike Johnson for Speaker. That's a vote for a national abortion ban. A vote for Nick LaLota is a vote for Donald Trump. That's 4 more years at least of division and demonization of people who we disagree with. We need to short-circuit that dysfunctional status quo by putting up a disruptive candidate who breaks that mold. Right now, we know people's frustration they feel is that we are always fighting. We're never fixing. We need to be able to reason together again. We need to find some hope in our politics again and to find common ground based on common facts, because that's the way you actually solve problems. The frustration people feel is that maybe the system doesn't work for them. It's rigged against them. It works for big business. It works for billionaires and multimillionaires who get wealth transfers while emergency workers suffer during pandemic and billionaires get richer. But we know we can together rebuild the middle class. We can rebuild the infrastructure to make life a little easier and better here in Long Island. We can strengthen that working with all our allies, but we have to do it in a different way. The math demands that we find candidates who can reach out and fire up Democrats and win over independents and Republicans, particularly in this election, and then work to help Democrats backfill everything so we can make sure that we can write a story about how Suffolk County follows the mold of what Southampton did, and East Hampton did, and Southold did. Districts that were once considered irretrievably Republican, won by putting forward common sense problem solvers with an optimistic attitude, not simply falling into the trap of the same old, same old. That's the map we can use, and this is a unique and important opportunity. This election is bigger than any of us. It's as big as all of us, because that's the only way we are going to win. We need to realize that this is not a time for politics as usual. This is a time to really all work together as Democrats to reach out. This is a time where we can remind people that they can have hope for our country and our community again, that we can solve problems again. That is part of what it means to defend democracy. And that's the kind of campaign I want to run with you together, to write a new playbook for how you can flip a district. And once we have this fever break that has torn our country apart, to build a new kind of politics, to show that we can fix problems for the American people again.
So just to close this out, I want to say thank you to both candidates. You're both excellent, and we will be well served to have either one of you represent us on the ballot in November. You had great answers, and you gave us a lot of good food for thought. Please cooperate with each other and don't resort to personal attacks, because that is how we lose. And to the audience, we win in November because we believe we are going to win. If we're negative on ourselves, that losing breeds losing and breeds Democrats staying home. If you go out and say to your friends and your neighbors how good these two candidates are and how happy you are to have the opportunity to vote for them both in June and in November, this primary will be a great event. We should be happy that we have these two here to represent us, and remember that the opponents are Nick LaLota and Donald Trump. Thank you for coming.